There's a strange irony in human relationships that often goes unnoticed. The more someone pulls away, the more we tend to lean in. It's a psychological game rooted in the idea that scarcity equals value. And women, whether consciously or subconsciously, understand this dynamic incredibly well. That's why, even when she likes you, or especially when she likes you, she might step back. She might stop texting, act distant, even cold. Not because she doesn't feel anything, but because she believes that creating distance will increase her perceived worth in your eyes. She's been taught that being too available makes her appear weak. So she masks her longing with silence, hoping it will pull you in. And here's the twisted part. Sometimes it works. Men, being wired to pursue, often mistake that space as a challenge. They feel compelled to re-engage, to win her over again, thinking they've done something wrong or that there's a deeper emotional problem to solve. But more often than not, there isn't a crisis, just a calculated test of value. This is where it becomes dangerous, because if you respond by chasing, you reinforce the idea that her silence holds power. You unintentionally teach her that emotional withdrawal earns attention. And so the cycle begins. You reach out, she pulls back. You try harder, she gives even less. And each time you chase, she believes her worth has just been proven again. Not because of who she is, but because of how much she can withhold and still draw you in. What she's doing isn't always malicious. It's not necessarily manipulation. Sometimes it's survival. It's a product of watching other women being left the moment they opened up. It's born from insecurity, from past betrayals, from the belief that being soft gets you hurt and being distant gets you desired. So she leans into the role of the unattainable woman, hoping that mystery will create magnetism. But the truth is, when love becomes a strategy, it stops being love. When she measures your commitment by how many silent treatments you'll endure, what she's really testing is your threshold for disrespect. And that's not a healthy foundation for connection. That's a transactional mindset built on fear, not authenticity. So if you're asking whether she expects you to chase again, the answer might be yes. But not because she deserves it, because she's relying on it to feel valuable. And if you keep showing up every time she retreats, you don't teach her that you care. You teach her that your time, your peace, and your self-respect are negotiable. Sometimes the only way to break the pattern is to stop playing the game. At the heart of most emotional games lies one persistent need: control. Not necessarily out of cruelty, not even always consciously, but from a deep-rooted desire to feel secure in an environment that feels uncertain. So when a woman distances herself, even though she still feels something for you, what's often happening beneath the surface is a quiet power shift. She's pulling back not to end the connection, but to see if you'll step forward, to see if you'll pursue again. Because if you do, she knows, without words, that she still holds influence over you. This isn't about needing your presence, it's about needing proof. Proof that she still matters, that she can still occupy your thoughts without making any effort. It's less about affection and more about reassurance. When you reinitiate, you aren't just sending a message, you're giving her confirmation. Confirmation that she's still desired, that she's still in control of the emotional tempo, and more importantly, that your emotions are still orbiting her, even after silence. Now, this gets more complicated when it becomes a repeated pattern, because the more you chase, the more she learns that withdrawal equals attention. It's not that she doesn't feel something genuine for you, she might, but that genuine feeling takes a back seat to the psychological thrill of knowing she can dictate when and how you come closer. If you respond predictably every time she creates distance, she becomes less interested in emotional connection and more fascinated by the control she holds over your reactions. As a power dynamic disguised as vulnerability. She plays cold, indifferent, unavailable, but beneath that performance, there's a craving for emotional leverage. She wants to feel that you're emotionally invested enough to try again, to explain yourself, to make sense of her silence. And when you do, the message is loud and clear. She's winning. She didn't have to say a word, and yet you're right back where she wants you. And here's where many men get it wrong. They confuse this dynamic with depth. They think her emotional unavailability means she's complex, layered, or worth chasing, when in truth, complexity and clarity can exist together. It's not confusing because it's deep. It's confusing because it's a strategy. An emotional strategy has nothing to do with real connection. It's about ego maintenance. So when she backs away and you feel that urge to chase, pause. Ask yourself, are you responding to her feelings or to the game she's playing to regain control? If it's the latter, then chasing her again doesn't prove your strength. It proves she can manipulate the rhythm of your attention without offering anything in return. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be pulled back into someone else's performance. There's a certain irony in human behavior. We say we want honesty, clarity, connection, and yet when those things show up, they often feel less compelling than ambiguity. Particularly in relationships, that ambiguity can take on a life of its own. When a woman begins to wonder whether you've truly let go, whether you've genuinely moved on or simply waiting in silence, it creates a tension that words can't achieve. It's not about what you've said, it's about what you haven't. That uncertainty begins to speak volumes. You see, silence isn't neutral. It carries weight. When you stop reaching out, when you withdraw your energy, when you no longer react to her breadcrumbs or indirect bids for attention, it forces her to confront a void she didn't expect to feel. Not because she didn't want distance, she may have been the one to create it, but because she never imagined you'd accept that distance without protest. She assumed you'd resist, that you'd try to fill the gap, to clarify, to restore the emotional balance. But you didn't, and that disrupts the entire pattern. What really begins to haunt her isn't your absence, it's the absence of reaction. Because most of what we do, especially in emotionally charged dynamics, is a test. It's a way of measuring influence. So when she does or says something that used to get a rise out of you, and now she's met with calm indifference, it shakes her sense of control. She's left to fill in the blanks. And what she imagines in that silence will almost always be more emotionally intense than anything you could have said directly. In fact, your silence becomes the story. She starts to wonder what changed. Was it something she said? Was it someone else? Did you finally see through the performance? Or worse, did you actually heal and let go? That last one stings the most, because if you've healed, you're no longer emotionally accessible in the same way. You're not just quiet, you're free. And nothing unnerves someone more than realizing the emotional leverage they once had is gone. That's when the tables turn. When a woman who once held the upper hand finds herself checking her phone a little too often, replaying old messages, revisiting moments she thought she was indifferent about. And it's not because she suddenly loves you more, it's because the ambiguity of your detachment is louder than any confession. She's trying to decode silence, and in doing so, she's attaching more meaning to your inaction than she ever did to your effort. Now, this isn't about playing games. It's not about using withdrawal as a tactic. It's about understanding the psychological truth of disengagement. Sometimes walking away speaks more honestly than trying to explain your worth. Because when someone is forced to sit in the space your presence once occupied, they either come to appreciate it or they realize they were only addicted to the attention it brought them. And if she's still wondering, still checking, still hoping for a sign that you'll come back to affirm her significance, then she hasn't let go, but you have. And that distinction changes everything, because she's not just missing you, she's missing the version of herself she felt when she knew you were watching, when she knew you cared. That sense of being desired, pursued, validated, it's hard to let go of, especially when it disappears without a final word. The most haunting question she can ask herself isn't, does he still care, but why doesn't he need me to know that he does? There's a particular kind of silence that doesn't just speak, it echoes. And in relationships, it's the absence of pursuit that creates the loudest psychological resonance. When you stop trying, when you pull back your energy entirely, what remains is a mirror she's forced to look into. But more often than not, what truly haunts her isn't the fact that you're gone. It's that you left without needing to announce it, without begging for understanding, without trying to make her see your worth one more time. You see, the moment you stop trying, you break a pattern. And that pattern wasn't just about you chasing, it was about her knowing you would. It gave her an unspoken sense of control. As long as you kept chasing, even subtly, she didn't have to question her influence. She could play distant, unpredictable, even indifferent, because your energy was always the constant. Your texts, your concern, your reactions were her proof that she mattered, not just to you, but in general. It validated her desirability, but the moment you stop feeding that validation, everything shifts. Now she's no longer the one holding the emotional upper hand. Now she has to sit with the realization that your energy, what once felt guaranteed, is no longer accessible. And that's uncomfortable. That discomfort grows in silence. It gnaws at the edges of her confidence because it challenges the idea that she could always rely on your emotional attention, no matter what. She begins to revisit moments, not because she misses you in a romanticized way, but because she's searching for clues. Was there a turning point? Did she go too far in testing your patience? Was there a message she missed? Suddenly, she's the one trying to decode you, trying to understand why you stopped doing what you always did. That reversal of roles can be quietly devastating, especially for someone who once felt secure in the fact that no matter what happened, you'd always be there in the background, waiting, hoping, chasing. When you stop trying, it disrupts her narrative of who you are. It forces her to question whether she ever truly understood you at all, that uncertainty plants seeds of curiosity, and curiosity, when left unanswered, can turn into obsession. It's not just about whether she wants you back, it's about whether she can live with not knowing why you stopped caring. That question is powerful. It doesn't demand closure. It doesn't ask for one more conversation. It just lingers quietly and does its work. And so you haunt her, not with presence, not with words, not even with anger, but with absence, with composure, with the calm strength of a man who no longer explains his value. There's something deeply unsettling about realizing someone no longer needs you the way they once did. It's not loud or dramatic. It's not the kind of revelation that comes through arguments or confrontation. It's far more subtle and therefore far more powerful, because when a man pulls away quietly, when he stops initiating, stops checking in, stops trying to fix or explain, it sends a signal that can't be ignored. He's recalibrated his worth and he's no longer placing it in her hands. And for many women, especially those who are used to holding emotional leverage, that silence is not just noticed, it's felt deeply. Because now it's not about what you're saying, it's about what you're no longer willing to say. You're not chasing clarity, you're not searching for closure. You've stopped offering your energy as a gift to someone who wasn't ready to receive it. And that absence, that's not passive, it's a statement. You see, when you were always there, responding, initiating, proving your sincerity, it gave her the luxury of emotional complacency. She didn't have to move toward you because she knew you'd fill in the space. She could withdraw, test, provoke, and delay without any real consequences. But when you step back and do it without resentment, without theatrics, just quietly and fully, it creates a vacuum, not one she's prepared for, but one that demands her attention. Now, the control she once felt begins to waver. She's left wondering not just why you stopped trying, but what that says about her. Was she not worth the fight? Did she push too far? Did she underestimate your ability to walk away? These are questions that don't have simple answers, and that's exactly what gives them their staying power. You're no longer part of the script she was writing in her head. You've exited the role she expected you to play. And that creates a disturbance in the storyline she had grown comfortable with. And that's where the haunting truly begins, not because you were cruel or cutting, but because you stopped feeding the illusion. You stopped orbiting around her. You reclaimed your direction and began moving in a path that no longer centered her. That movement, especially when done with grace and peace, triggers a confrontation with self that she can't avoid. Sometimes the most unforgettable thing you can do is simply walk away and never look back. There's something incredibly powerful about stillness, about no longer trying, no longer reaching out, no longer explaining yourself. It's the silence after the storm that often carries the most weight, because in that stillness, she doesn't hear your voice anymore, and that's when the echoes of her own choices begin to get louder. When you were constantly trying, sending the message, starting the conversation, extending the hand, she never had to sit with herself. She never had to face the absence of effort on her end, because yours always filled in the gaps. But now you've removed the mirror. You're no longer reflecting her significance back to her. You've stepped out of the frame. And when a woman loses that reflection, when she no longer sees her influence working the way it used to, she begins to question whether she ever truly had it in the first place. That question doesn't disappear easily. It lingers. It replays. Because something about your detachment feels too certain, too final, too unbothered to be reversed with a simple text or a casual check-in. She begins to wonder not just what changed, but when it changed, and more importantly, why? You're not the same anymore. The haunting doesn't come from anything you said. It comes from everything you didn't say. It's in your absence. It's in your indifference. It's in the way you've reclaimed your emotional energy and redirected it without making a grand announcement. That quiet, unshakable shift in posture, where you no longer offer explanation, validation, or pursuit, is what keeps her thinking long after you've moved on. Because most people expect noise when something ends. They expect closure, conflict, chaos. But when they get nothing, when they get space, distance, silence, that's when they begin to panic. She'll go over everything. The texts, the moments, the things she thought she'd always be able to control. She'll search for the turning point, the place where your energy began to pull away, and she'll find nothing solid. Because the change wasn't explosive, it was gradual, it was internal. It happened the moment you realized your peace was more valuable than her confusion. And once that realization fully rooted itself, you didn't just stop trying, you stopped needing to try. So now, you don't have to say anything at all. Your silence is loud enough. Your absence is defined enough. And her wondering, that's the echo that follows her long after you've left the room.